Hey there, fourth grade. Today we are on to equivalent fractions strategy number 4, which is set counters. So, excuse me, if you would like to label your next page in your math notebook, equivalent fractions strategy number 4, set counters, please do so. And after you've titled your page, mark it with your pencil and close your math notebook till we get to the we do. So our first 3 strategies, just to remind you, we used fraction bars so far. We used fraction circles so far. And we used partitioned drawings so far. All great strategies and ones I use often. Today's, I kind of call today's set counters. It uses pieces again. But you don't necessarily have to use pieces. You could use drawings too of these pieces. So let's get to it and let me show you. All right. So here's our examples. We've done this example with our other strategies, but I want to show you it a new way today. So are these equivalent? 4/8 and 1/2. So set counters, I call set counters these pieces right here. These are little tiles. Whoop, dropped it. And they've got red on one side and yellow on one side. And to use them to show fractions, I'm going to do this. So I'm going to let me go back to the question and see what it was again. 4/8 and 1/2. So if you remember with partition drawings, I usually liked to start with the fraction with the smaller denominator to see if they were equal. With this one, I actually like to start with the fraction with the larger denominator. So I'm going to make 4/8 with my counters and show you why. So I'm going to take 8 of these pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Move these others aside. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 4/8 of them be one color. Like let's say I'll make 4/8. Oh, they're already there. 4 out of 8 are yellow and 4 out of 8 are red. So let's say I'm looking at the yellow one. So if I make my 4/8 yellow and kind of line them up like this in an array, when I look at this, I can easily see the fraction 4/8, right? Because 4 yellow out of 8 total pieces. But another way I look at this, if you look at the rows, or the columns rather, instead of looking at each individual pieces, I can group all my yellow and all my red together. And I can also see the fraction 1/2, right? There are 2 rows, and 1 out of the 2 rows is yellow. 1 yellow row out of 2 rows. And so that shows me when I look at this, I can look at it and see 4 out of 8. Or I can see 1 yellow row out of 2 yellow rows, which means they are equivalent. Yes. All right, let's try another one. So 7/10 and 1/2. Let's see if these are equivalent. So again, I'm going to start with my larger denominator. It's a little easier on these to start with your larger denominator with this strategy. So let me clear out. Erase. And I'm going to start with that 7/10. So I'm going to bring 10 of these over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yellow pieces out of 10 total pieces. And I'm going to see if I can set them up in rows that look like 1/2 to see if it's equivalent to 1/2. So I can maybe make 2 rows of 5. But if I do, this is kind of how I would set it up in halves, right? Half the pieces are in this row, and half the pieces are in this row. But when I look at that, half the pieces are not yellow. It's more than half. If I had 5/10 like that, then I could say, well, one out of 2 rows, half the rows are yellow and half the rows are red. But with these, there's no way I can set these up in a way that looks like a half. Even if I try to put all my yellow on one side, just doesn't, it's not even. My two parts are not even. It doesn't look like a half. So looking at that, there's no way I can look at those pieces and say that 7/10 and 1/2 are equivalent. All right. And next, so find an equivalent fraction to 2/5. So let me go back here. Clear out. Erase. And so I want 2 yellow out of 5 total. So this shows me 2/5. Right? 2 yellow out of 5 total pieces. And I need an equivalent fraction to that. So the first thing is, let's see if I can organize them in a way that just shows me one. So if I want a yellow row and a red row, or a yellow column and a red column, those aren't even. It's like just looking at those, I don't easily see another fraction there. There's no obvious one to me. So what you can do if you can't obviously see one to kind of break it into parts is you can, just like when a partition drawing, I could like double it and make it into twice as many pieces. I can make this into twice as many pieces too. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take 2/5 and I'm going to make it again. Like that. So if you look carefully at this, this is still 2/5 because I've got 2, 3, 4, 5 rows and 2 yellow rows out of 5 total rows is 2/5. Oh, can't see that, can you? Is 2/5 of the row. So when I look at this, I still see 2/5. But I also see an equivalent fraction to 2/5, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 yellow out of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So when I look at this picture, I can either see 2/5 or I can see 4/10. Those are equivalent fractions either way. Pretty neat, huh? And I could do that just like partitions. I could partition it once, or I could partition it twice, or I could partition it 3 times. I can add even more and do the same thing here. I didn't have to only add one set of the fraction. Whoops. I could add 3 and say, well, that's still 2/5, right? 1, 2 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I also now see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 15. And so there's another equivalent one. So it doesn't matter how many sets you add. All right, let's do one in your notes. Open up your math notebook. You can draw circles and stars. I'll do that even for you. Instead of showing the pieces again, maybe I'll draw them for you. But we're going to kind of do the same thing. So, on to the we do. All right, our 3/4 and 5/8 equivalent. So I'm going to start with, it's easier to start with the greater denominator, then you don't have to do that duplicating trick I just did. And I'm going to try to arrange 8 pieces with 5. Let's do 5 stars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And out of 8 things. So maybe 8 circles. I don't know. All right. And so if I look at these, the question is, can I arrange these in a way that lets me see 3/4? So I set them up like this in 4 rows, as you can see. But in order for it to be equivalent, I would need 3 out of the 4 rows to be stars, and they are not. So I need 3 rows out of 4 to be stars. And they're not quite. So these would not be equivalent. If this was a star and we had 6/8, then I could see, look, 1, 2, 3 rows out of 4 rows would be stars, but that's not the case here. So those are not. Let me undo that star. So those are not. All right, 2/3 and 8/12. So again, I'm going to start with 8/12.
Morning, teachers. I have about 10 promise to Gwinnett papers, and I need a lot more, please.
Sorry about that. Tried to pause you out of that announcement. So I'm going to make 8/12. I'm going to set them up to look like 2/3. So I'm going to try to set them up in 3 rows and see if I can make 8/12 look like 2/3. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 12, 9, 10, 11, 12. And if I do that, you'll notice I can say, I can group them so that they look like thirds. 2 out of 3 rows are stars. So from that drawing, I can see that this is either 8/12, or I can see that it is 2 out of 3 rows are stars. 8 out of 12 pieces are stars. 2 out of 3 rows are stars. So those are equivalent. Okay. And last but not least, find a fraction that is equivalent to 2/6. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2/6 of those are stars. So let's see if I can rearrange these in a way that lets me see another fraction. If I line up my stars, since I have 2, if I line them up like this, and then 2 circles, if I rearrange my set counters that way, I can see an equivalent fraction here, right? I see 2/6, and I also see 1 out of 3 rows are stars. So I can see that as 2 out of 6 pieces, or 1 out of 3 rows. And that's it. That's the set counter strategy. I like it a lot. If you like to rearrange kind of pieces, it's nice. Another thing I like about it is that you can draw, or you can use these, which I have these in the room in bags with the fraction bars, and you are welcome to use them anytime you need them if this is a strategy that you really like. They're also kind of easier to move around than the drawings, which is nice. Like if I redid that last one, I get my 2 out of 6 pieces. I can very quickly manipulate them how I want. So feel free to come grab these pieces tomorrow if you would like to. That's the set counter strategy. If you think that was a breeze, once you have your notes written down, you're all done. If you thought that was a little tricky, I would encourage you to go back and watch the 2 examples again so that when you get to class tomorrow, you're kind of all ready to go and you really have a good feeling about this. Okay? That's a wrap, though. Have a good day. See you tomorrow.